Time now for Morning Rounds with CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook and CBS News contributor Dr. Holly Phillips. First up this week, researchers may have found a better way to make the body's immune system fight cancer. The approach uses a simple tetanus vaccine. John?
Anthony, the researchers from the Preston Robert Tisch Brain Tumor Center at Duke University used an innovative approach that may lengthen the lives of patients with one of the deadliest forms of cancer, the brain tumor glioblastoma.
68-year-old Sandy Hilburn feels fortunate to have lifelong friends and 6 grandsons.
They are such good little boys.
She was diagnosed with glioblastoma, a vicious brain cancer with average survival of about 1 to 2 years. That was 9 years ago.
I was actually told that I would have 2 or 3 months to live.
In 2006, Hilburn began an experimental cancer vaccine therapy at Duke University. To prepare the vaccine, a patient's white blood cells are extracted and exposed to protein from a virus called CMV. CMV is found in glioblastoma cells, but not in healthy brain tissue. Like a bloodhound given a scent, the body's immune cells use the CMV protein to find, then destroy the cancer cells. Dr. John Sampson is professor of surgery at Duke.
Because our immune systems are particularly adept at attacking viruses, we felt it would be a great opportunity for us to attack the tumor by attacking the virus.
In early studies, the vaccine did not work well, so a tetanus shot was added before treatment to prime the immune system.
The tetanus produces a certain chemical, which is a super activator for the vaccine.
6 patients received CMV vaccine alone and survived an average of 18.5 months. 6 other patients got a tetanus shot first. 3 survived for an average of 22 months. 2 lived for about 5 and 6 years. And 1, Hilburn, is still healthy at 9.
You had 1 grandson before you got sick.
Yes.
Did you ever imagine you would be able to be around to see 5 more grandchildren?
This sounds so obnoxious, but yes. In fact, I think I'm good for at least another 10 years.
John, this is obviously very promising news, but why doesn't the immune system naturally attack cancer?
Well, in order for the immune system to attack cancer, it has to be able to find it first. And long before Harry Potter and long before Star Trek, the cancer cells were using cloaking devices to pretty much hide themselves, shield themselves from your own immune system. And what these new therapies, these new approaches do is try to strip off the cloaking device. And then once the immune system can find it and see the cancer, it can kill it.
Well, this week also brought a new discovery in the fight against breast cancer. A study found 15 new genetic hotspots that it could increase a woman's risk of developing the disease. So it's in our genetics.
It is in our DNA. You're absolutely right. You know, this was a very large British study. They looked at 120,000 women and really studied their DNA. And what they ended up finding were 15 specific genetic variations that raise the risk of getting breast cancer. They're called hotspots. Now, this adds to a number of hotspots that have already been identified. So in total, now we know around 90. But what this really represents to me is that this is the future of how we're going to approach breast cancer and many cancers in general. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. How we prevent it, how we screen for it, and how we treat it is really going to be guided in large part by what our DNA shows.
Well, John, so then how is this going to affect breast cancer diagnosis and treatment?
Well, this whole concept, like Holly was saying, that we're looking at molecular mutations. We're looking at different changes from one cancer to the other. We used to think there's colon cancer, there's breast cancer, there's pancreatic cancer, and those are separate. And now we're realizing it's really the mutations that they each have, the molecular defects, and some of them are shared by these different cancers. So then rather than having that old-fashioned way of categorizing cancers, look at the molecular defects, design specific personalized treatments to address those, and then go at it from that. And some of them may actually address 2 or 3 cancers at once.
Fascinating. Next up, the CDC and American Medical Association launched a major new initiative to help prevent type 2 diabetes. It's one of our country's most debilitating chronic diseases. Holly, this initiative focuses on reaching out to those living with prediabetes, right? So tell us about this condition.
Right. Well, prediabetes is incredibly important. It's basically where you're living with blood sugar that's too high most of the time, but not high enough to be what we call true diabetes or true type 2 diabetes. You're sort of right before that. It's important, though, because a large number of people who have prediabetes will, in fact, go on to develop type 2 diabetes within a 5-year period. It's also striking because 86 million Americans are thought to have prediabetes, and 90% of them don't know it. So this initiative could not have come too soon.
But is the goal here a cure?
I think the goal is to prevent people who have prediabetes from going on and getting diabetes, which can be so devastating. And the diabetes prevention trial showed an amazing finding. With just slight modifications in your lifestyle, you can decrease the risk of going on to diabetes by 58%. And we're talking about maybe like 5% or more loss of body weight, right. Some low saturated fat diet, increasing your fiber, and increasing your exercise. Not a ton, maybe just like 4 hours a week or more. So there are things that people can do. Those 90 million people out there who potentially could get diabetes, you could prevent it.
So there's really an opportunity for prevention here, Holly.
Very much so. I mean, diabetes takes such a huge toll on our nation. It's not entirely clear that our healthcare system is ready to take on the number of new diabetes cases that are happening every day. Right now, 1 in 3 Americans is at very high risk of developing diabetes in their lifetime. But if we can catch people early when they're just in the pre-diabetes stage, we can change that.
Well, leading public health researchers are calling for a tobacco-free world in 25 years. These experts say the UN needs to lead a turbocharged approach against selling and using tobacco. They say 1 billion people will die from tobacco use by the end of this century if authorities don't work harder to stop it.
Finally, a study out this week is causing quite a stir among parents. Researchers find moms and dads who overvalue their children tend to raise youngsters with an overblown sense of superiority. They say parents who tell their kids they're more special than others may be raising narcissists. Oh, that's what's happened to me.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. And actually, there were some really good tips. You know, one of the things the researchers suggested is that, let's say your children do well on their homework. You don't want to necessarily say, oh, you're so smart. It might be better to emphasize you worked really hard, so that if they don't do well on their homework the next time, they don't feel, I'm not smart.
Right.
They focus on, oh, I need to work harder. So you can really sort of teach them sort of important coping mechanisms.
I found some solace, though, that narcissists' children don't tend to be narcissists themselves.
Yeah, I saw that.
So,
but you know where it's coming from, right? I mean, what parent doesn't want to have a kid with more self-esteem, with more confidence?
Yeah.
But the secret isn't to have unconditional praise, it's to have unconditional love.
Right.
No matter what the performance of the kid is.
Good advice there. Dr. John LaPook, Dr. Holly Phillips, thank you both.